Please comment where you are watching in the world. Well, we went out for sushi and we just didn't quite click. Maybe we just weren't terribly attracted to each other, or maybe, I don't know, we were just both SAPs. But it was awkward enough that I thought the date was going to end after dinner. The silence between us had stretched longer and longer as we picked at our California rolls, and I could feel that familiar sinking sensation in my stomach. Not from the raw fish, but from the dawning realization that this just wasn't working. You know that feeling when you're both trying so hard to make conversation that every topic feels forced? That was us. I kept glancing at my phone, hoping he'd take the hint, but he seemed oblivious to the growing tension. So, I kind of casually said after dinner that I was just going to walk to my friend's apartment because they happened to live close. It was my polite escape route, or so I thought. He goes, "Okay, great, that sounds like fun," and came with me to my friend's place. My heart sank. I know, I should have clarified that I meant I was leaving alone, but I didn't want to hurt his feelings. The words were right there on my tongue. Oh, actually, I meant I was going by myself, but something about his eager smile made me swallow them down. I told myself I was being kind, but really, I was being a coward. As we walked the 3 blocks to Sarah's apartment, I kept hoping he'd suddenly remember he had somewhere else to be. Instead, he chatted animatedly about the neighborhood, pointing out restaurants he wanted to try, completely oblivious to my increasingly strained responses. My mm-hms and oh cools were getting shorter and more forced, but he didn't seem to notice. When Sarah opened her door, I caught her eye and tried to communicate my predicament with a look. She raised an eyebrow, but played along when I introduced him. We were just going to have a quick drink, I said, emphasizing the word quick while staring meaningfully at her. Anyways, we end up having a few drinks at my friend's place, and my friend and I say how we were planning to go to this bar for karaoke. Again, he assumes we meant all together. I know, I'm bad at making things clear, obviously. But here's the thing, Sarah and I had been planning this girls' night for weeks. It was supposed to be our chance to decompress, maybe complain about our respective dating disasters, and belt out some Alanis Morissette. When I mentioned the karaoke plan, I was hoping he'd take it as another natural ending point. Instead, his face lit up. "I love karaoke," he exclaimed, and I felt my chest tighten. Sarah shot me a look that clearly said, "What the hell?" But I just smiled weakly and nodded. What else could I do? Tell him he wasn't invited? I was trapped by my own politeness, and with each passing moment, the trap was getting smaller. We're all drinking, he gets kind of plastered. The karaoke bar was crowded and loud, which I thought might help diffuse the awkwardness, but it only made things worse. He kept buying rounds without asking, kept suggesting duets, kept finding excuses to lean in close when he talked to me. His hand would land on my lower back, linger on my arm, brush against my thigh when he laughed at his own jokes. I found myself physically recoiling, creating distance that he immediately closed. Sarah noticed. I could see her watching us with growing concern. When he went to the bathroom, she grabbed my arm. "What the fuck is happening?" she whispered urgently. "I don't know how to get rid of him," I admitted, the words tumbling out in a rush. "He just keeps staying. Just tell him you're tired." "I've tried. He doesn't take hints." When he came back, swaying slightly, he draped his arm around my shoulders like we were a couple. I went rigid, but he either didn't notice or didn't care. He starts leaning on me and being a little too touchy for how awkward the date has been, and I can feel panic starting to bubble up in my chest. This isn't just awkward anymore. It's becoming something else entirely. Eventually my friend and I decide we're going to just bounce. We all drove together, so he comes back with us. I was praying the car ride would sober him up, that maybe the fresh air would snap him back to reality, and he'd realize this night needed to end. But if anything, he got worse, slumping against me in the back seat, his head lolling onto my shoulder despite my attempts to shift away. "Almost there," Sarah muttered from the driver's seat, catching my eye in the rearview mirror. I could see my own desperation reflected back at me. Then we get back to my friend's apartment. He asks if he can use the bathroom. Of course we say yes. What else were we going to do? But as soon as the bathroom door closed, Sarah grabbed my arm. "You have to get him out of here," she hissed. "This is insane. He's been here for like 6 hours." I know. But how? He won't take a hint." "Stop hinting. Just tell him." But even as she said it, we both knew I wouldn't. I couldn't. Some twisted part of my socialization had convinced me that being direct would be cruel, that I owed him my continued politeness even as my skin crawled with discomfort. So my friend and I are sitting in her living room, watching Hocus Pocus, because what else do you watch when you're drunk? And we hear him just all out hurling in the bathroom. The retching sounds were violent, echoing through the thin apartment walls. Sarah and I exchanged horrified looks. Jesus Christ, she whispered. He was in there for 2 hours throwing up. 2 hours. I kept checking the time on my phone, watching the minutes crawl by with increasing dread. This wasn't just a quick stomach upset. This was a full-scale disaster, and he was having it in my friend's bathroom. I kept knocking and asking if I could call him a cab, but he kept saying he was fine. Each time I knocked, my voice got a little more strained, a little more desperate. Are you sure you don't want me to call someone? I'd ask through the door. No, I'm good, would come the weak reply, followed by more retching. Sarah was pacing now, shooting me increasingly murderous looks. This is insane, she kept muttering. This is absolutely insane. I felt responsible, guilty, trapped. How had a simple dinner date turned into this nightmare? How had I let it get this far? Every time I thought about being more direct, more firm, something held me back. What if I hurt his feelings? What if I was being mean? What if this was somehow normal and I was overreacting? But deep down, I knew this wasn't normal. Normal dates end. Normal people read social cues. Normal people don't spend 2 hours vomiting in a stranger's bathroom while their unwilling hostesses watch Bette Midler and contemplate calling the police. Eventually, hocus pocus ends, and my friend, having more balls than myself, tells him he has to leave. Her voice was firm, final, the voice I should have used hours ago. I think it's time for you to head home, she said when he finally emerged, pale and shaky. He looked genuinely surprised, as if the thought of leaving hadn't occurred to him. Oh, he said, blinking slowly. Okay. I walk him out to the front porch, ask again if I can call him a cab. He says no. The night air was cold against my skin, and I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly aware of how exhausted I was. This date had started at 7 p.m. It was now past 2 in the morning. I can really call you a ride, I offered one last time, hoping against hope that he'd accept and disappear into the night. Nah, I'm good, he said, swaying slightly on his feet. Then he leans in, as if he's going to kiss me. Time slowed down. I could smell the alcohol on his breath, see the glassy look in his eyes, feel the weight of his expectation hanging in the air between us. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to step back, to put my hands up, to say no, but I was frozen, trapped between politeness and panic. He seems to think better of it at the last second, pulling back with a confused look on his face. Maybe some part of his drunk brain finally registered my body language, my obvious discomfort, the way I'd gone rigid as a board. And then he says he hopes he can see me again soon. The words hit me like a physical blow. After everything, the awkward dinner, the unwanted touching, the hours of refusing to leave, the bathroom disaster, he still thought this had gone well. He still thought there would be a next time. Oh, I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. He smiled at me, that same eager, oblivious smile he'd worn all night, and started walking down the street. I watched him go, weaving slightly, until he disappeared around the corner. I stood there on Sarah's porch for a long moment, shaking from cold, from exhaustion, from the delayed shock of what had just happened. When I finally went back inside, Sarah was waiting with a glass of water and a look of pure fury. Never again, she said firmly. Next time, we're being rude. I should have trusted my gut when Michelle suggested we meet at that dimly lit coffee shop on the outskirts of town. Something about her insistence on the location felt off, but I'd been talking to her online for 3 weeks, and her photos were so stunning that I convinced myself she was just being cautious. Smart women were careful about first dates, right? The profile pictures showed a radiant 25-year-old with cascading auburn hair, bright green eyes, and the kind of smile that could stop traffic. Her messages were witty, flirtatious, and perfectly timed. She claimed to work in marketing, loved hiking, and had recently moved to the area after a bad breakup. Everything about Michelle seemed too good to be true, and as I would soon discover, it absolutely was. I arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early, my palms sweating despite the October chill. I'd changed my shirt 3 times and spent an embarrassing amount of time perfecting my hair. This was my first real date in months, and Michelle seemed like she could be something special. I ordered a black coffee and claimed a corner table with a clear view of the entrance, checking my phone every 30 seconds for any last-minute messages. At exactly 7 o'clock, a woman walked through the door and scanned the room. My heart sank immediately. This wasn't Michelle, at least, not the Michelle from the photos. This woman was easily in her 50s, with graying hair pulled back in a messy bun and deep lines etched around her eyes. She wore a faded denim jacket that had seen better days and carried herself with the weary posture of someone who'd lived through disappointments. She was attractive in her own way, but she was definitely not 25. I looked back at my phone, hoping the real Michelle would walk in any moment. Maybe this woman was just another customer. But then she approached my table with a knowing smile that made my stomach drop. "Dom," she asked, extending her hand. "I'm Michelle." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stared at her, then at my phone's screen showing her profile picture, then back at her. The resemblance was there if you squinted. The same bone structure, similar eye color, but it was like looking at a photograph that had aged 30 years. I'm sorry, I think there's been some mistake," I stammered, half rising from my chair. "No mistake, honey," she said, sliding into the seat across from me with unsettling confidence. "Sit down. Let's talk." Something in her tone made me comply, though every instinct screamed at me to leave. She ordered a latte from the passing barista, as if this were the most normal thing in the world. "You look confused," Michelle said, stirring sugar into her drink. "I suppose you're wondering about the photos." "Those weren't you," I said, finding my voice. "Those were pictures of someone else entirely. My daughter, actually," she replied without a hint of shame. "Beautiful girl, isn't she? Just turned 26 last month. She gets her looks from me, well, from how I used to look." The casual way she admitted to the deception was almost more shocking than the lie itself. I expected embarrassment, apologies, some acknowledgement that what she'd done was wrong. Instead, she sipped her latte and watched me with amused eyes. "You catfished me," I said, the words feeling strange in my mouth. "You used your daughter's photos to trick me into meeting you." "Catfished is such an ugly word." Michelle waved her hand dismissively. "I prefer to think of it as creative marketing. You wouldn't have given me a chance if I'd used my real photos, would you? Be honest." The bluntness of her question caught me off guard. She was right, of course, but that wasn't the point. "That's not how this works," I said. "You can't just lie about who you are." "Why not?" She leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with something that made me deeply uncomfortable. "Everyone lies online. People use filters, old photos, flattering angles. I just took it a step further. At least I'm being honest now, in person. That counts for something, doesn't it?" I stared at her, trying to process the twisted logic. "You lied about your age, your appearance, probably everything else. How is that honest?" "I never lied about my personality," she said. "Those conversations we had were real. The connection we made was genuine. Isn't that what really matters?" "No," I said firmly, standing up. "What matters is trust, and you've proven I can't trust you." But Michelle wasn't finished. As I reached for my jacket, she grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. "Sit down, Dom. We're not done here." There was something in her voice, a hardness that hadn't been there before. I looked around the coffee shop, suddenly aware of how isolated our corner table was. The few other customers were absorbed in their laptops or conversations. "I've been married 3 times, Michelle continued, as if I hadn't tried to leave. Each husband thought he knew who I was when he married me. They were all wrong, of course. People see what they want to see. I just helped them along." 3 marriages? I repeated, sinking back into my chair despite myself. "Currently working on number 4, she smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. "I have several dating profiles active right now. Different names, different photos, different stories. It's amazing how many men are looking for the same thing, a young, beautiful woman who will make them feel special." The coffee shop suddenly felt too warm. I loosened my collar, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. "You do this regularly? Trick men into meeting you?" "I prefer to think of it as giving them what they need," Michelle said. "Most of them are so lonely, so desperate for connection, that they're grateful for any attention. Even from someone like me." "Someone like you?" "A middle-aged woman with baggage," she said matter-of-factly. 3 failed marriages, 2 kids who barely speak to me, and a mortgage I can barely afford. Not exactly what men are searching for on dating apps, is it?" I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the October weather. "So you steal your daughter's identity instead." "Borrow," she corrected. "And she doesn't mind. She thinks it's funny, actually. She helps me pick which photos to use." The revelation made my skin crawl. This wasn't just one woman's desperate attempt at finding love. It was a family enterprise built on deception. "I should go," I said, standing again. "Should you?" Michelle tilted her head, studying me like a predator sizing up prey. "We've already met. We've already talked. The hard part is over." Why not see where this goes? Because you're not who you said you were. But I could be exactly what you need, she said, her voice taking on a persuasive quality that made me deeply uneasy. I'm experienced, Dom. I know how to make a man happy. Those young girls you're chasing online, they don't know anything about real relationships. They're all surface, no substance. I backed away from the table, my heart pounding. This is insane. You're insane. Michelle's smile never wavered. Call me when you change your mind, she said, sliding a business card across the table. I'll be waiting. I didn't take the card. I walked out of that coffee shop and didn't look back, but I could feel her eyes on me until I reached my car. As I drove home, my hands shaking on the steering wheel, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. I met a guy on Craigslist. Yeah, I know, that right there should have been my first red flag, but this was years ago when people still used it for meeting others and not just buying couches or, well, whatever sketchy things people buy on Craigslist now. We talked on the phone for a few weeks before meeting in person, and he was charming enough, at least in that kind of weird, overly intense way. He had this voice that was both steady and strangely flat, like he was reading off a script sometimes, but I brushed it off because I thought maybe he was just nervous. So finally, we decided to meet up at his place. I know, his place for a first date, another red flag, but I was trying to be adventurous. I figured, hey, we've been talking for weeks, what's the worst that could happen? When I walked into his apartment, it looked fairly normal at first. Clean, tidy, almost too tidy. But then I saw the second bedroom. The door was open just enough that the glow from a small lamp spilled out, and curiosity got the better of me. Inside, it was like stepping into another world, a shrine. Not in the cute, he framed a few pictures of his family way, but in the if you walk in too far you might not walk out kind of way. There were framed portraits of his grandparents on every wall, dozens of them, staring at you from every angle. Their old clothes were folded neatly on chairs, like they were just waiting to come back and put them on. The bed in the corner was made with lace sheets, and on the nightstand there were half-burned candles, rosaries, and a jar of coins that looked like something out of the 1940s. The whole room smelled faintly like mothballs and wax. I tried not to let my face show how creeped out I was. He noticed me peeking in and casually said, "That's for my grandparents. They raised me, and I don't ever want to forget them." Which, okay, sure, I could understand grief and holding on to the past, but this was more than remembering. This was worship. I just nodded and smiled like it was the sweetest thing in the world. We started dating because despite all the odd vibes, he had this intensity that made me feel wanted. Like really wanted. Almost needed. And at first, that felt flattering, but it didn't take long before the shrine wasn't the weirdest thing anymore. Within the first month, he started setting rules. He demanded that we take showers together every night before bed. Not in a cute, sexy way, but because he said the sheets had to remain pure. We were only allowed to sleep nude because pajamas or underwear would contaminate the bedding with dust and germs. The sheets had to be washed twice a week, sometimes more if he felt they'd been compromised. One night, I got thirsty and slipped out of bed to grab a glass of water. I didn't even turn on the lights, just shuffled into the kitchen, filled a cup, and came back. When I climbed into bed, he bolted upright like I had set off an alarm. "Did you walk in the living room?" he snapped. Yeah, I just got water." He launched into this 30-minute rant about how I had tracked living room germs into the bedroom, how I had disrespected his system, how I was putting us both at risk. He wouldn't even let me touch him until I took another shower and remade the entire bed. It was like dating a germophobic cult leader. I should have left then, but when you're in something, it's hard to see it clearly. There were good days too, days when he seemed almost normal, when he'd cook for me or tell stories about his childhood that made me feel guilty for judging him. But the cracks only deepened. The breaking point came when he told me he didn't want to meet my mother. Fair enough, right? Not everyone's ready for that step. But then he handed me a piece of paper and said he needed her to sign it. A letter, typed out in stiff, formal language, declaring that she respected his wishes not to meet her and would never attempt to contact him. And not only did she have to sign it, but he wanted it notarized. I laughed at first because I thought it was a joke. He didn't laugh. He was dead serious. He told me if she didn't sign it, then she was a threat to his boundaries, and that I was putting him in an impossible position. That was the moment the Twilight Zone music started playing in my head. It wasn't just quirky or even controlling anymore. It was dangerous. I ended things not long after. It wasn't dramatic. I just slowly stopped answering calls, avoided him, made excuses. Eventually, he got the message, though not without sending a few long, self-righteous texts about how I was failing the standards he set for love. The scariest part? He's an NYPD officer. Yep. A man who screamed about invisible germs, worshipped a room full of dead relatives, and demanded signed, notarized letters from people he'd never met is out there patrolling the streets with a badge and a gun. And that's not exactly the kind of guy I want protecting the, what did he call it? The sheet streets. I'm a paraplegic and have been stood up many times when going out on dates. They never show to the place or when I come to pick them up. It's become this predictable pattern that I've almost grown numb to. The excitement of planning something nice, picking out what to wear, making sure my chair is clean and my transfer board is ready, only to sit there alone at some restaurant or coffee shop, watching couples laugh and share stories while I check my phone for the inevitable something came up text that never comes. The worst part isn't even the rejection itself. It's the hope that builds up beforehand. Every time I match with someone online or get a number, there's this voice in my head that whispers, maybe this time will be different. Maybe this person actually read my profile. Maybe they saw the photos where my chair is visible and they're genuinely okay with it. Maybe they're one of those rare people who can see past the wheels and the medical equipment and just see me. The guy who loves terrible horror movies and makes killer pancakes and has strong opinions about which pizza places deliver fastest. But then reality hits, and I'm left transferring back into my car alone, trying not to let the disappointment show on my face as I drive home past all the places I thought we might go for a second date. One time, I even drove 250 miles to meet what seemed to be a cool chick. We'd been talking for weeks, real conversations, not just small talk. She knew about my situation, or at least I thought she did. I'd mentioned it casually, the way I'd learned to do, slipping it into conversation like it was no big deal. Yeah, I use a wheelchair, but I'm pretty mobile, I'd said during one of our late-night phone calls. She'd responded with something like, that's cool, and moved on to talking about her favorite TV shows. I took that as acceptance. The drive there was filled with nervous energy and genuine excitement. I'd mapped out accessible routes, called ahead to make sure the restaurant could accommodate my chair, even brought along my good cushion, the one that doesn't make that weird squeaking sound when I shift positions. I was prepared for everything except what actually happened. When I pulled up to her place, she came out to meet me, and honestly, things started off great. She was even prettier than her photos, with this infectious laugh that made me forget about all the previous disappointments. We hit it off immediately. The conversation flowed naturally. She didn't do that thing where people talk louder to me like I'm also deaf, and she didn't insist on pushing my chair or treating me like I was made of glass. We got some Chili's, and I was actually having fun. Real fun. Not the forced kind where you're constantly monitoring the other person's comfort level. She asked normal questions about my job, my hobbies, my family. She told me about her work as a graphic designer and her obsession with true crime podcasts. We laughed about stupid internet memes and argued playfully about whether pineapple belongs on pizza. For a few hours, I felt like just a regular guy on a regular date. After dinner, she suggested we go back to her place to watch a movie. My heart rate picked up, not just because of the obvious implications, but because it felt like genuine interest. She wasn't making excuses to end the evening early or suggesting we take things slow. She wanted to spend more time with me. Her apartment was on the second floor, which should have been my first red flag, but she assured me it would be fine. We made it up there without too much trouble. I'm pretty good at navigating stairs when I have to, and she was helpful without being overbearing. We settled on some Netflix thriller, and she suggested we watch it in her room on the bed, where it would be more comfortable. This was it, the moment I'd been hoping for but also dreading. The transfer from wheelchair to bed is always the most vulnerable part of any interaction. It's when the reality of my disability becomes most apparent, when the illusion of normalcy gets stripped away. I rolled up to the bed to transfer over, and the way a person who is paralyzed has to get onto the bed, they have to reach down and grab their legs and lift them up onto the bed. It's not graceful. There's no way to make it look smooth or natural. Your legs are dead weight, and you have to manually position them like you're arranging mannequin parts. For some reason, she stared at my legs for probably a good 20 seconds without blinking. Not a curious glance, or even an uncomfortable stare that people sometimes do when they're processing something new. This was different. This was the kind of stare you give to something that horrifies you, something you can't look away from even though every instinct tells you to. I tried to not really say anything or not look at her, trying to not turn an awkward situation even more awkward. I've gotten good at pretending not to notice when people stare. It's a survival skill you develop, the ability to act like you don't see the pointing, the whispers, the way conversations stop when you roll by. But this felt different because it was supposed to be safe. This was supposed to be someone who accepted me. After the 20 seconds was up, I looked up at her and said, "Are you okay?" She didn't even look at me, kept staring, and said, "I don't think I can do this." Those 7 words hit me like a physical blow. Not "I'm not ready," or "maybe we should take things slower," or even "this is weird for me." Just a flat, final rejection of everything I am. I mean, I understand what is wrong with me. That's fine. I have to deal with that. And I tried to be the coolest guy with everything, joking about the paraplegia and all that good stuff, setting off the "I understand what happened to me and I don't dwell on it and am moving on" vibe. I've perfected this persona over the years. The guy who's so comfortable with his disability that everyone else should be too. The one who makes jokes before anyone else can feel uncomfortable, who acts like rolling everywhere is just a quirky lifestyle choice. But that right there, well, it tore me up. I instantly burst into tears. Couldn't control myself. I poured waterfalls. All that carefully constructed confidence, all those years of building up emotional armor, just crumbled in an instant. The tears came from somewhere deep and primal, from every rejection and every pitying look and every time someone had made me feel less than human. The sad thing was, we were on the 2nd floor, and I had to get some neighbors to help me down. The humiliation was complete. Not only had I been rejected in the cruelest possible way, but I couldn't even make a dignified exit. I had to sit there, tears still streaming down my face, while strangers lifted my chair down the stairs like I was a piece of furniture. I swear I hate being paralyzed. It's bad enough that I have to enlighten any girl that is even remotely interested in me in the direction of sex because most think that I can't do it. There's this whole education process that comes with dating when you're disabled, explaining what works, what doesn't, what's possible, what's not. It's exhausting having to be a teacher and advocate and potential romantic partner all at once. Life is so bogus sometimes. But I keep trying, keep hoping that someday I'll meet someone who sees the person before the chair, someone who doesn't need a 20-second stare to decide whether they can handle loving me. The text came in on a Tuesday morning while I was drinking coffee and scrolling through work emails. "Want to come to this picnic thing this weekend? It's at some state park. I'm bringing my crew along." Sarah and I had met the week before at a wine bar downtown. The date had been fine, not electric, but fine. She worked as both a massage therapist and a part-time bartender, which I found intriguing. No red flags, no obvious incompatibilities. When she suggested a second date, I figured why not. "Your crew?" I texted back. "Yeah, just some friends. It'll be fun. Very low-key." I should have asked more questions. Saturday arrived crisp and clear, perfect picnic weather. I packed a cooler with beer and sandwiches, threw a blanket in my car, and drove the 40 minutes to Raccoon Creek State Park. Sarah had texted me the coordinates of their spot, and I followed a winding trail through the woods until I heard voices and the sound of dogs barking. The clearing opened up to reveal Sarah sitting on a large plaid blanket, laughing at something a tall, bearded man was saying. 2 golden retrievers bounded around them, occasionally dropping tennis balls at their feet. This, apparently, was the crew. "Hey!" Sarah waved me over. "This is Tim, and these are his dogs, Buster and Penny." Tim stood up immediately, extending his hand with the kind of firm grip that suggested he'd been raised to make good first impressions. "Great to meet you, man. Sarah's told me so much about you." Had she? I glanced at Sarah, who was already unpacking what looked like enough food for a small army. Tim seemed genuinely friendly, the kind of guy who probably coached Little League and helped elderly neighbors with their groceries. He was handsome in an outdoorsy way, with laugh lines around his eyes and the build of someone who actually used his gym membership. "Tim's amazing with dogs," Sarah said, scratching Penny behind the ears. "And kids too. You should see him with the little ones here." As if on cue, a group of children from another picnic spot came running over, drawn by the golden retrievers like moths to a flame. Tim immediately shifted into entertainment mode, showing them how to properly throw a tennis ball, teaching them the dogs' names, making sure the smaller kids didn't get knocked over by Buster's enthusiastic tail wagging. I found myself sitting on the blanket, watching this performance with growing unease. Not because Tim was doing anything wrong, quite the opposite. He was being perfectly charming, perfectly helpful, perfectly everything. When Sarah mentioned she was thirsty, he jogged to his car to get her a specific brand of sparkling water. When she complained about the sun, he repositioned their umbrella without being asked. When she wanted to take photos, he became an eager photographer, snapping dozens of shots of her with the dogs, her with the scenery, her with the children who had gravitated toward their little group. "You two seem to know each other pretty well," I said during a lull in conversation, trying to keep my tone casual. "Oh, we've hung out a few times," Sarah said, not looking at me. She was watching Tim, who was now engaged in an elaborate game of fetch with both dogs simultaneously. The afternoon stretched on. Other picnickers came and went. The sun moved across the sky. I made conversation, ate potato salad, threw tennis balls for the dogs, and tried to shake the growing feeling that I was somehow intruding on something. Tim and Sarah had an easy rhythm together. Inside jokes, shared references, the kind of comfortable familiarity that doesn't develop overnight. Around hour 3, I started paying closer attention to their interactions. The way she touched his arm when she laughed. The way he anticipated her needs before she voiced them. The way they both seemed to forget I was there for long stretches of time. By hour 4, I was actively studying them like an anthropologist observing some strange mating ritual. Tim would disappear to throw away trash or refill water bowls, and Sarah would watch him go with an expression I couldn't quite read. When he returned, she'd brighten in a way that felt performative, as if she was trying to prove something to someone. But to whom? Hour 5 arrived with the golden hour light that photographers love, casting everything in warm amber tones. The children had long since returned to their own families. Other picnickers were packing up. Tim was lying on his back, letting both dogs use him as a pillow, while Sarah took photos of the scene with her phone. I couldn't take it anymore. "So Sarah," I said, my voice cutting through the comfortable silence, "how long have you and Tim known each other?" She looked up from her phone, and for just a moment, I saw something flicker across her face, guilt, maybe, or annoyance at being caught. "Oh," she said, her voice suddenly bright and artificial. "I met Tim on OkCupid about 3 months ago." The words hung in the air like smoke. Tim's eyes opened, and he glanced between us with what looked like dawning comprehension. One of the dogs whined softly. "He's going through a divorce," Sarah continued, as if this explained everything. "And he's not sure if he's going to get custody of his kids or not. I don't really want to date anyone with children, you know? It's complicated." She said this last part while looking directly at me, as if I should understand, as if I should nod and agree that yes, of course, this made perfect sense. As if the last 5 hours of my life, sitting there like some unwitting third wheel, while she essentially auditioned 2 different men for the role of boyfriend, was completely reasonable behavior. Tim sat up slowly, gently displacing the dogs. "I should probably start packing up," he said quietly. "Already?" Sarah's voice had a sharp edge to it now. But we were having such a nice time. I stood up, brushing grass off my jeans. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that would have been beautiful under different circumstances. "Yeah," I said, "I should head out too." Sarah looked between us with something that might have been panic. "But we haven't even had dinner yet. I brought all this food. I'm sure you and Tim can handle it," I said, walking toward the trail. Behind me, I heard her call my name once, but I didn't turn around. The dogs barked as I disappeared into the woods, probably wondering why the pack was suddenly breaking up. I wondered the same thing, but I was pretty sure I already knew the answer. The drive home gave me plenty of time to think about what had just happened, and by the time I pulled into my driveway, I'd reached a conclusion. Some people collect stamps, some people collect coins, and some people collect dating options. Sarah, apparently, was a collector. I never heard from her again, which was probably for the best. I hoped Tim figured out what he wanted before she decided what she wanted for him. I still think about that night sometimes, even though I wish I could erase it from my brain. My name's Abigail, and this story isn't some cutesy haha worst date ever anecdote. It gutted me. It's the kind of thing that sits in your chest years later, reminding you of how brutal people can be when they don't see you as a person, just an object they want to size up, judge, or use. So his name was Ben. We'd been chatting for a little while online. Nothing too heavy, but enough to think, hey, maybe this will be fun. Maybe it'll be normal. That was mistake number 1, expecting normal. Ben texted me that he was on his way to pick me up. I got ready, put on something that made me feel decent about myself, stood outside my apartment waiting under the street lamp. It was one of those sticky nights where the air clings to your skin, and I was already nervous, already questioning if he was going to find me attractive in person. Then I see his car slow down, roll by me once like he's checking. I give a small wave. He doesn't stop. He doesn't smile. Just keeps rolling past like I'm invisible. A minute later, my phone buzzes. It's a text from him. I can't go out with you. I'm too superficial. Just like that. Like I wasn't even worth the gas money to park. No hello, no face-to-face, no nothing. Just a drive-by rejection. My stomach dropped. My throat burned. I wanted to disappear into the ground. I remember standing there, clutching my phone so hard I thought the screen would crack, trying to swallow back that feeling like you've just been spat on. He had seen me, just one look, and decided I wasn't good enough to sit across from him for a drink. And the worst part, this wasn't 6 months ago. This was 6 years and 50 pounds ago. I wasn't even at my heaviest. But to Ben, I was already disqualified. Too much. Not what he pictured when he imagined taking a girl out. I turned and went back inside, head pounding with shame, telling myself to just shrug it off, that I didn't even know this guy. But it didn't feel that way. It felt personal, like he'd measured my body with his eyes, and then slammed the door in my face. I was in the middle of changing back into pajamas when another text came through. My heart stupidly leapt, thinking maybe he'd apologize. Maybe he realized he was being cruel. But no. The message said, "Okay, we can have sex, but no dating or relationship stuff." I just sat there staring at the screen, reading it over and over like my brain couldn't process it. He wouldn't be seen in public with me, wouldn't take me to dinner, wouldn't even call it a date. But my body? That was fine. My body was usable. Good enough to fuck, not good enough to love. I felt sick. Actually sick. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. I wanted to scream. Instead, I just sat on my bed and cried into my hands like I hadn't cried since middle school, ugly and loud and shaking. And here's the part that still messes me up. Some small, pathetic part of me actually considered saying yes. That's what trauma does. That's what years of being told your worth is tied to your size or your looks does. A voice in the back of my head whispered, "At least he wants you for something. At least it's attention." But then another part of me screamed louder, the part that had a shred of self-respect left. "No, Abigail. You're not just a hole for this guy. You're not his dirty little secret. You're not going to let him fuck you in the dark and then ghost you like trash." So yeah, I blocked his number. Hated the guy. But the damage was already done. That one interaction lodged itself deep inside me. Every date afterward, every time I stood outside waiting for someone new, I wondered if they'd take one look at me and drive off too. If they'd see me as a joke, a mistake, a waste of time. That night wasn't just about rejection. It was about humiliation. About being reduced to a body and nothing else. About a man who had the audacity to look me in the eye, decide I wasn't good enough, and then still try to get what he wanted anyway. Like I was some vending machine that had nothing but sacks to dispense. Her name was Jackie, and I still wince when I say it out loud. Some people leave you with fond memories, others leave you with trauma, but Jackie left me with tinnitus and secondhand embarrassment so bad that my body still stiffens whenever I hear a shrill laugh in a restaurant. It started like most dumb dates do online. She looked decent enough in her photos. Not stunning, but approachable. Cute in a girl next door kind of way, or so I thought. The kind of face you could bring home for Sunday dinner without your parents asking questions. What her profile didn't mention, what the carefully cropped selfies didn't capture, was that her voice could cut glass. I know that sounds dramatic, but I swear to God, the second she opened her mouth, I felt like someone was jamming an ice pick into my eardrum. High-pitched, nasally grating. Like a smoke alarm that wouldn't shut off. Or like she'd swallowed a whistle as a kid and never digested it. I remember thinking, oh my God, if this is how she sounds ordering food, what the hell does she sound like during sex? We were at Red Robin, sitting in a booth sticky with old soda syrup, waiting for milkshakes and appetizers. A safe choice, I thought, casual, public, cheap enough that I wouldn't feel robbed if it all went south. Which it did, faster than I thought possible. The first real gut punch came when she started talking about her love life. Or lack of one. "I've never had a boyfriend," she said, sipping her water like it was no big deal. "Except this one guy online, but that doesn't count. He lived in Texas. We only ever texted." I blinked. "How long did that last?" "For years," she said, completely serious. "4 fucking years." She had invested for years of her life in a man she'd never seen in person, never kissed, never touched. A guy in Texas who probably had a whole-ass wife and kids. I tried not to react, but inside my brain was screaming, "Run, Samuel. Run now." Then the drinks came. She had ordered a freckled lemonade, which is basically lemonade with strawberries in it. Not complicated. The waitress sets it down, and Jackie takes one sip, makes a face, and then explodes. "What the fuck is this?" she screeched, loud enough that the entire booth section turned their heads. The waitress froze, clearly confused. "It's the freckled lemonade, ma'am. That's what you ordered." Jackie slammed the glass on the table, so hard that some of it splashed onto the menu. "It has fucking strawberries in it," she yelled, like this was some act of betrayal. The poor waitress stammered. Yes, that's what makes it freckled." And Jackie cut her off. "Don't you get smart with me, bitch. I don't want fruit floating in my drink." I sat there, jaw clenched, wanting the ground to open up and swallow me whole. People were staring. Families with kids. A guy at the next booth raised his eyebrows at me like, "Is this your problem?" And yeah, it was. I had chosen to meet her. I was sitting across from her. I was the idiot. I tried to calm her down, whispering, "Jackie, it literally says on the menu that it comes with strawberries." Wrong move. She turned on me, her voice somehow climbing another octave. "Are you taking her side? Jesus Christ, Samuel, don't be such a pussy." The waitress, bless her, offered to bring a plain lemonade instead, and scurried off before Jackie could hurl another insult. That was the moment I realized this night was already dead. Not dying, dead. And I still had half a plate of onion rings in front of me. We sat in awkward silence after that, her scrolling on her phone, me staring at the condensation dripping down my milkshake glass like it was the most interesting thing in the world. Every so often she'd let out this nasal snort laugh at whatever she was reading, and each one stabbed through me like a dentist's drill. I couldn't take it anymore. I needed an out. So I pulled out the oldest, dumbest excuse in the book. "Hey, I just remembered I've got some work stuff I need to take care of tonight. I should probably head out after this." She narrowed her eyes like she knew I was full of shit, but didn't call me out. "Whatever," she said, stabbing at the onion rings. "You're boring anyway." Boring. That's what she called me after screaming at a waitress over a fucking strawberry. I paid the bill, left a huge tip to try and make up for the abuse she'd hurled, and practically ran to my car. The second I shut the door, I sat there in silence, heart pounding, trying to shake the sound of her voice out of my skull. It's been years since that night, but I still think about it sometimes. The shrillness of her laugh, the venom in her words, the way she looked at me like I was weak just because I didn't want to humiliate a stranger over a drink. That's the thing people don't tell you about dating nightmares. It's not always about the big, dramatic moments. Sometimes it's about the little humiliations that stick with you. The piercing sound of someone's voice. The sting of being insulted in public. The shame of sitting across from someone who reveals, within minutes, exactly how nasty they are. I wish I could forget this night. God, I wish I could scrub it out of my memory like you'd wipe filth off a floor. But it clings. It doesn't fade. And sometimes, in the middle of the night when the house is quiet, I swear I can still hear it. The sound that ruined me for weeks afterward. His name was Derek. I met him online, back in that stupid, desperate phase of my life where I thought meeting strangers from the internet was my ticket to love, or at least some kind of connection. His photos weren't amazing, but they weren't bad either. He looked normal, average in a way that almost felt safe. And when you're tired of being lonely, normal starts to look like a dream. We messaged back and forth for a bit, and he seemed fine. Not overly charming, but not creepy either. Just fine. He made me laugh a couple times, and at the time, that was enough to make me think maybe this could go somewhere. So when he suggested hanging out, I said yes. That was mistake number 1. And mistake number 2? Letting him come to my apartment. I can't even explain why I thought that was okay. Maybe it was laziness. Maybe it was trust. Maybe it was just me being stupidly optimistic. Either way, the second he showed up at my door, I regretted it. Derek was bigger than his photos. Way bigger. His pictures had been carefully chosen, cropped to hide most of his body. In person, though, there was no hiding it. He was massive, heavy in a way that made the staircase up to my place groan under his steps. I tried not to react, tried to plaster on a polite smile, but my nerves were already screaming. We barely spent any time in my apartment before he said some of his friends were throwing a party, and he wanted to take me. I didn't want to go, but I couldn't find the words to say no. That was always my problem, never wanting to be difficult, even when I knew better. So I went along. The party was suffocating. His friends were loud, nosy, and invasive, asking me personal questions like they were trying to measure me up for him. And Derek? He kept reaching for my hand, leaning in close, acting like we were already together. I sat there clutching a plastic cup of warm beer, forcing laughs, trying not to shrink under the weight of it all. By the time we got back to my apartment, I felt drained. I didn't want him there anymore, but I couldn't exactly shove him out the door, so he followed me inside like he belonged. That's when I made another mistake. I drank. A lot. I downed beer after beer until my body felt numb, hoping if I drank enough, I could just pass out and the night would be over. I told him I wasn't feeling well, that I just needed to lie down. I crawled into bed, pulling the covers over me, silently begging him to take the hint. Instead, he followed me into the bedroom. He leaned over me, tried to kiss me, and I'll never forget it. The rough scrape of his upper lip against my skin, like sandpaper tearing across my mouth. I pulled away, told him I was too sick. He didn't argue, but he didn't leave either. I stumbled into the bathroom and locked the door. I sat on the cold tile floor, head spinning, whispering to myself, please just go, please just go. I stayed there long enough that I thought maybe he would give up and leave. When I finally dragged myself back into the bedroom, the lights were off. For a brief second, I thought he had gone. Relief started to wash over me. Then I heard it. That sound. Wet, rhythmic, obscene. At first, I thought maybe I was imagining it. Maybe the alcohol was playing tricks on me. But no, it was real. Derek was lying in my bed, jerking off. Loudly. Not even trying to hide it. Just stroking himself in the dark like it was the most natural thing in the world. My stomach twisted. My whole body locked up. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I just stood there, frozen, listening to the slick sound of his hand on his cock, the heavy breathing, the muffled groans. It was disgusting. Violating. I crawled into the far corner of the bed, curling up as small as I could, turning my back to him, pulling the blanket up to my chin. I squeezed my eyes shut so hard it hurt, trying to block it out. But the sound didn't stop. It filled the room, worming its way into my ears, into my brain. And then finally it stopped. Silence, thick and heavy. I don't know where he finished. I didn't want to know. I just lay there, stiff as a corpse, pretending to be asleep, praying he wouldn't try to touch me. Eventually, exhaustion dragged me under, and I passed out. When I woke up, he was gone. No note, no text, no apology. Just silence and the faint stink of sweat and stale beer. I never spoke to Derek again, but the damage was already done. That night left a mark I couldn't scrub away. It wasn't just that he jerked off in my bed without asking. It was the way he ignored me, ignored my no, ignored the signals that I didn't want him. It was the way he made me feel powerless in my own space, like my voice didn't matter, like my comfort didn't matter. Derek probably never thought twice about it. To him, it was just a night. Maybe he told his friends about it, laughed it off, or maybe he just forgot me completely. But for me, it became one of those nights that carves itself into your bones. People wonder why I don't use dating apps anymore. Why I don't invite men into my space. Why I freeze up if someone tries to stay over. This is why. Because of Derek. Because of the sound. That sound. That wet, ugly, desperate sound. It creeps back sometimes uninvited. When the house is quiet and I'm lying in bed, I'll think I hear it again. And my chest tightens, my throat closes, and suddenly I'm right back there, in the dark with him. Trapped. Helpless. That's what trauma does. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't fade just because you want it to. It sticks. And for me, it sounds like Derek, alone in the dark, ruining my bed with the one sound I'll never forget. Always the sound. This was back in the MySpace days, when every girl seemed to have those same photos. The ones taken from above, usually in a bathroom mirror, head tilted down at some unnatural angle, lips pursed, cleavage pushed up. That was Kelly's profile in a nutshell. I'll admit I fell for it. She looked cute in her pictures. Really cute. Soft smile, sharp eyeliner, hair pulled just so. She didn't look like a model or anything, but she seemed approachable, the kind of girl who might laugh at dumb jokes. We'd been messaging for a little while, nothing heavy, just the typical "what music do you like?" or "what's your favorite movie?" kind of thing. She seemed normal enough, so I decided to meet up with her. My first real mistake. We agreed on a spot in the mall, right out in front of one of the bigger stores. That way it would be public, safe, and easy to find each other. At least that's what I thought. I got there a few minutes early, pacing around, trying not to look like some weirdo loitering by the entrance. I checked my phone obsessively, smoothed my shirt, glanced around at every girl walking by. My heart was racing in that nervous way it does before a first meeting, the kind where you're terrified and excited at the same time. Then my phone buzzed. It was Kelly. "I think I can see you," she said, her voice oddly hesitant. "Is that you in front of the store?" I froze, scanning the crowd. My eyes darted left and right, over faces, over groups of teens, over families. But then, there was this massive woman standing right in front of me, blocking most of my view. She was big, close to 300 pounds if I had to guess, her frame taking up the whole walkway. And without thinking, God, I wish I had thought, I said into the phone, "I can't see you. Are you behind that huge lady?" Silence. It was a silence that lasted just long enough for my gut to drop. Long enough for me to realize, in absolute horror, that the huge lady I was talking about was Kelly. My blood ran cold. I wanted to vanish. I wanted to melt into the floor and never come back up. My stupid, shallow words echoed in my head, louder and louder with each passing second. And then she spoke. "That's me." Her voice was flat, sharp, cutting through me like glass. My throat closed. I couldn't even choke out an apology. I just stood there, phone pressed to my ear, eyes wide as she walked toward me. It was her. Same eyeliner, same hair, same smile, except it wasn't the same. The angles had lied. The pictures had lied. She didn't look like the girl in those photos. She looked angry and disappointed, and something else I couldn't put my finger on. I stammered something like, "Oh hey, Kelly," trying to recover, trying to patch over what I'd said. She didn't respond. She just gave me this look, this long, unreadable look, like she was deciding right then and there whether to forgive me or destroy me. We went inside, and I thought maybe, just maybe, we could salvage the night. We walked to the food court, sat down, and I tried to start small talk. She didn't say much at first, just stared at me with that same expression. But then she started eating. God, she ate. She ordered more food than I thought a single person could handle. Burgers, fries, a milkshake, a basket of chicken strips. She tore into it all while I picked at a slice of pizza, my stomach too twisted to eat. Every bite felt like it was being taken out of me. I kept trying to steer the conversation, asking about her job, her hobbies, anything to break the tension. She gave short answers, one-word replies, never taking her eyes off me for long. Every so often she'd pause mid-bite and just look at me, this strange mix of hurt and something darker. I was sweating. My hands shook every time I reached for my drink. I couldn't stop replaying what I'd said outside. That huge lady. Over and over in my head. My heart hammered, my skin prickled, and I felt trapped. The scariest part wasn't that she was big. The scariest part was that I had insulted her without knowing, and now I was stuck at a table with her, watching her pile of food vanish while she stared at me like she could see right through me. At one point, she leaned forward, her voice low, her tone sharp. "You didn't expect me to look like this, did you?" I froze, my mouth dry. I couldn't even form words. I just shook my head, muttered something about pictures being different sometimes. She smirked. Not a happy smirk. A cold one. "You called me a whale." My chest tightened. I wanted to crawl out of my own skin. I didn't mean. But she cut me off, shoving another handful of fries into her mouth. She chewed slowly, eyes never leaving mine. The silence that followed was heavier than anything I've ever felt. We sat there for what felt like hours, me drowning in shame, her methodically eating like it was some kind of performance. Like she wanted me to watch. Like she wanted me to suffer. Eventually, I mumbled some excuse about needing to leave. Work, family, something. I don't even remember. She didn't argue. She just kept smirking, kept chewing, kept staring. I walked out of that mall with my heart in my throat, feeling her eyes on me the entire way. When I got to my car, I sat there gripping the steering wheel, shaking, trying to breathe. My ears were ringing, my chest tight, my head pounding with the sound of her voice repeating in my mind, "You called me a whale." I don't even know where to start with this one. Every time I think about it, my stomach knots up and I get this sour taste in my mouth, like I've just taken a shot of cheap vodka. And that's fitting, because vodka is exactly what Carmilla lived on. She drank it like it was air, like it was water, like her body couldn't function unless it was drowning in the stuff. I met her on Match.com. When we had agreed to finally meet, I thought it would be a casual date, maybe a couple drinks, maybe a laugh or two. What I walked into was a full-blown nightmare that I still don't know how to process. We met at this bar in downtown Portland, nothing fancy, just your average place with sticky tables and a jukebox in the corner. She was already there when I arrived, hunched over the counter, a glass in her hand. I thought maybe she'd ordered a cocktail, maybe something fruity. But no. The bartender filled me in later, straight vodka. No ice. No mixer. Just glass after glass of raw, burning alcohol. When I sat down, she looked at me with these glazed eyes and this crooked smile. Adrian, she slurred, and my name sounded like it had been pickled in liquor. At first, I thought, okay, maybe she's just nervous. Maybe she had a couple drinks before I got here. But the longer I sat there, the more I realized, no. This wasn't nerves. This wasn't a one-time slip. This was who she was. She was gone. She kept ordering drinks. Glass after glass of vodka, like it was nothing. She didn't even flinch when it hit her throat. I'd sip a beer slowly, trying to pace myself, and she'd slam down her empty glass and shout for another like she was trying to prove something. The bartender gave me a look at one point, this weary, "You better keep an eye on her" look, and I felt that dread creep in. And then came the fights. It started small, with some guy brushing past her chair. She snapped at him, cursed him out, called him every name under the sun. He looked confused, muttered an apology, but she wasn't done. She stood up, shoved him in the chest, and for a second I thought she was going to throw a punch. I had to step between them, my heart racing, whispering, "Carmilla, please sit down, it's fine." She sat, but the rage simmered. And the more she drank, the worse it got. Every little thing set her off. A laugh from the next table. A song on the jukebox she didn't like. A waitress taking too long to bring another round. She snapped at everyone, spitting venom, while I sat there sinking lower and lower into my seat, wishing I could vanish. And then the bathroom incident. She got up suddenly, swaying, mumbling that she had to piss. But instead of heading to the bathroom, she squatted. Right there, in the corner of the bar. I couldn't believe it. My brain shut down, my body went cold, and all I could do was stare as she relieved herself in public like it was the most normal thing in the world. People gasped. Someone shouted. I wanted to disappear. I should have left. God knows I should have left. But something in me, maybe pity, maybe stupidity, kept me there. She was so far gone, and I felt responsible somehow, like I couldn't just abandon her. By the end of the night, she couldn't even walk. She slumped against me, dead weight, her breath hot with alcohol. She kept muttering things I couldn't understand, strings of curses and half-formed thoughts. I had no choice. I had to get her home. Except I couldn't take her to her car. She'd kill herself or someone else if she tried to drive. So I brought her to my apartment. That was mistake number 2. She collapsed on my bed, still mumbling, still twitching with restless energy. I stood there, looking down at her, feeling like I was babysitting a sick child instead of spending time with a grown woman. I pulled the blanket over her, made sure she had water on the nightstand, and just sat there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, wondering how the hell my night had come to this. At some point, I drifted off in the chair. When I woke up, she was sprawled across the bed, drooling, her makeup smeared, the smell of sweat and booze hanging heavy in the room. She looked broken, shattered, and I felt broken just looking at her. The next morning wasn't much better. She staggered around, still shaky, still half drunk, demanding more water, more food, more everything. She barely remembered the night before, and what she did remember, she laughed off. That's just me, she said. That's how I have fun. Fun. She called it fun. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. My head ached, not from drinking, but from the stress of keeping her from killing herself. My body was exhausted, drained from the constant tension. And when she smiled at me, asking if we could do it again sometime, I felt this deep, hollow dread. Because here's the part that tore me up the most. My dad was an alcoholic. I grew up watching him drink himself into oblivion, watching him ruin everything around him. And sitting there with Carmilla, seeing her chug vodka like water, seeing her piss in a corner like it was nothing. It was like being dragged back into my childhood, forced to relive every wound I thought I'd escaped. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to cry. I wanted to run. But instead, I just nodded, numb, and waited for her to leave. When she finally walked out the door, I locked it behind her and sank to the floor. I cried then, ugly, heaving sobs that racked my whole body. Because I realized I hadn't gone on a date. I'd walked back into a nightmare I thought I'd left behind. I never spoke to Carmilla again. I blocked her number, deleted my Match account, swore off dating for months. But the memory stuck. The smell of vodka. The sight of her crouched in a bar, pissing on the floor. The dead weight of her body slumped against me. And worst of all, the way it felt like I was 10 years old again, standing in my childhood home, watching my dad stumble and fall, powerless to stop it. When I first saw Mia's profile on Match.com, I thought I'd hit the jackpot. Every picture was a headshot, different angles, different lighting, different smiles. She had this dazzling grin, perfect makeup, eyes that seemed to sparkle even through the pixelation of my old laptop screen. Athletic, her bio read, right under extremely outgoing and loves hiking. I bought it. Hook, line, and sinker. I remember showing her photos to a buddy at work. "Dude, she's hot," he said, raising his eyebrows. I nodded, feeling a flicker of pride, like I'd pulled off something extraordinary just by exchanging a few messages with her. The first red flag should have been that she never once sent me a full body shot. Not one. Always shoulders up, always carefully cropped. I told myself that maybe she was just modest, that maybe she didn't want creeps staring at her figure. But deep down, I think I knew. I just didn't want to admit it. So we arranged to meet. Starbucks in town. Safe, public, casual, my go-to for first dates. I got there early, sipping nervously at a coffee, rehearsing small talk in my head. Then the door opened, and in she walked. And my stomach dropped. It was Mia, yes. The same face from the photos, but the rest of her body, was nothing like what she'd described. She wasn't athletic. Not by a long shot. She was maybe 5 feet 5 inches, and I'd guess around 300 pounds. I froze, my brain scrambling for an explanation. Maybe she'd put on weight recently. Maybe the pictures were old. Maybe. But the truth was simple, she had lied. Lied about her body type. Lied about being athletic. Lied about the way she presented herself. She spotted me and waved, her smile wide. I forced a smile back, stood up, and greeted her. The conversation was fine. Stilted. Polite. We sat across from each other, sipping our drinks. She talked about her job, her dog, how she loved staying active. That word again, active, and I found myself gripping my cup tighter, biting my tongue. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't rude. I nodded, asked questions, laughed when appropriate. But inside, I felt trapped. Misled. Awkward. The girl I thought I was meeting wasn't the girl sitting across from me. After half an hour, I couldn't take it anymore. I smiled, thanked her for meeting me, and said the classic line. "It was nice to meet you." And then I left. No promises to call. No hint at a second date. Just a polite ending. I thought that was it. A mismatched date, nothing more. But the next day, I opened my inbox to find a message from Mia. 3 pages. It started with, "What's your fucking problem, Craig?" My stomach twisted as I scrolled. "You think you're too good for me? You think I'm not attractive because I don't fit into your shallow little fantasy? Fuck you. You're just another asshole who only cares about weight. Do you know how fucking hard it is to live in this world when people like you judge every inch of my body? Do you have any idea how cruel that is?" The words blurred together in a mess of rage and venom. "You sat there at Starbucks acting like you were too good for me." Smug little laugh, fake little smile. "You couldn't even say what you were really thinking. You're a coward. A pathetic, superficial coward." I scrolled further, my pulse racing. "Here's the truth, Craig. I am beautiful. I am sexy. I am desirable. And men like you, will never deserve me. I wasted my time meeting you. You probably went home and jerked off to a picture of some skinny bitch who looks like a model, didn't you? Don't deny it. That's all you care about. Tits, ass, waistline. You don't give a shit about personality. You don't give a shit about real women." By the second page, her anger had curdled into something darker. "You led me on. You humiliated me. Do you know how it feels to walk into a place, full of hope, only to see the judgment in someone's eyes? I saw it, Craig. I saw how you looked at me. Like I was disgusting. Like I was less than human. You think I didn't notice? You think I didn't feel it?" My hands trembled. My coffee sat untouched on the table beside me as I read, my stomach churning. By the third page, her words had turned almost obsessive. "You'll regret this. You'll regret dismissing me. Because one day, when you're old and alone, when no one wants you anymore, you'll remember me. You'll remember the chance you had with a real woman, and you'll know you fucked it up. You'll know you threw away something good." The message ended without a signature. Just white space. I sat there, staring at the screen, heart pounding. What terrified me most wasn't just the anger, it was how personal it felt. She wasn't just lashing out at some random guy on Match. She was lashing out at me. At my eyes, my laugh, the way I said goodbye. She had studied me, dissected me, and now she was hurling it all back like knives. I hadn't said a single word about her weight. Not one. I hadn't insulted her. I hadn't called her names. I'd been polite, respectful, civil, And yet here she was, tearing into me like I was the villain of her life story. You ever have one of those nights where you think, okay, I'm gonna go on a normal date, maybe get some food, maybe a little action later, and instead you wind up smack in the middle of what feels like a Martin Scorsese outtake? That was me the night I realized my college ex's dad was basically the Polish Hulk with a drinking problem. So picture this, it's a Saturday night in Brooklyn. Williamsburg, to be exact. I'd already been seeing my ex, let's call her Natalia, for a couple weeks again. She was one of those on-again, off-again girls, you know? Beautiful in that messy, dangerous way. Jet black hair, heavy eyeliner, and a cigarette always dangling out of her mouth even when she swore she'd quit. I wasn't in love, but I was hooked. We went out to eat on Bedford Avenue, a little ramen spot that was way too expensive for what it was. She orders sake, I get a beer, we're talking shit about people walking by. It was one of those nights that felt like it could tip either way, romantic or explosive. With her, it was always both. Afterward, she says, let's go back to my place. My parents want to see you. Now, let me tell you something about me. I don't like meeting parents. Never have, never will. But I was riding that post-date high, and she lived nearby, so I figure why not. We hop the L train, ride it 2 stops, and walk a few blocks off Graham Avenue. That neighborhood at night smells like pizza, exhaust, and piss, all rolled into one. Classic New York. We're holding hands, she's laughing about some guy we saw puking outside the ramen shop, and I'm thinking, yeah, maybe this night's gonna turn out alright. We get to her building, 3 stories, old red brick, iron gate out front that squeals like a dying animal when you open it. We walk up to the door, and right away something feels wrong. The lock's busted. The door's hanging open just a little. Natalia freezes. What the fuck, she whispers. We step inside. The place is a wreck. Drawers pulled open, couch cushions tossed around, shit all over the floor. It looks like a hurricane tore through. And there's her parents, standing in the middle of it. Her mom's crying in Polish, holding a rosary. And her dad, Jesus Christ. Her dad looks like he's ready to go 12 rounds with the devil himself. Now let me paint this picture. Her dad, Merrick, is a mountain of a man. 6'5" easy, built like he was carved out of stone, with forearms thicker than my thighs. The kind of guy who could pick you up with one hand and toss you across the East River. And drunk? He wasn't just drunk. He was soaked in vodka. You could smell it before you even got close. His cheeks were flushed red, his eyes wild, his hands shaking like he was trying to hold back an earthquake. Natalia's mom is begging him to sit down, calm down, but he ain't hearing it. He's pacing like a caged animal, muttering in Polish, slurring English here and there. Then suddenly, bam, he storms outside. Me and Natalia follow him, and that's when all hell breaks loose. We're on the sidewalk, right off Concelia Street, and Merrick just loses it. He grabs this iron fence post, like who even does that? He yanks it out of the ground like it's a toothpick. I swear, the sound of the concrete cracking made my spine shake. And then, like some goddamn Marvel character, he starts smashing the pavement with it. Over and over, sparks flying, metal screeching. And it doesn't stop there. Oh no. He turns and starts swinging at the parked cars lined up along the block. Windshields shatter. Alarms start blaring. He smashes a side mirror clean off a Camry, then dents the hood of a Honda like it's made of tinfoil. I'm standing there frozen, heart jackhammering in my chest, thinking this is it. This is the moment I get arrested for accessory to whatever the hell this is. Natalia's screaming, Tata, stop, please stop, but he's gone. He's in some vodka-fueled rage spiral, fists flying, fence posts swinging. Neighbors start poking their heads out windows. Someone shouts, call the cops. And sure enough, within minutes, NYPD rolls up. 2 squad cars, sirens blaring, lights flashing red and blue across the street. Cops jump out, hands on their belts, shouting commands. Sir, put it down. Put it down. But Merrick ain't putting shit down. He roars, actually roars, like some wild animal, and slams the post into the ground again. Pavement cracks. I'm sweating bullets, thinking they're gonna shoot him. They're actually gonna shoot him right here in front of us. So I do the only thing I can think of. I step forward, hands up, trying not to piss my pants. Please, I beg the cops. He's drunk, he's angry, but he's not dangerous. He's my girlfriend's dad. He's just upset 'cause the house got robbed. The cops are side-eyeing me like, who the fuck is this idiot? But I keep talking, keep pleading, trying to calm them down before someone pulls a trigger. Natalia's crying, her mom's praying, and I'm in the middle, begging NYPD not to kill the Polish Hulk. Finally, after what feels like an hour, but is probably only a couple minutes, Merrick drops the post. Not 'cause the cops scared him, but 'cause he's exhausted. Sweat's pouring down his face, his breath ragged, and he just lets it fall with a clang that echoes down the block. The cops swarm him, but instead of tackling, they just stand around, hands ready, waiting to see if he'll start again. I keep saying, "Please, he's not a bad guy, he's just drunk, let us take him inside, please." And by some miracle, they let us. Maybe they were tired, maybe they didn't want to deal with the paperwork, maybe they looked at me and thought, this poor bastard's already living in hell. Whatever it was, they let him go. We guide him back inside, and I swear my arms are about to snap from the weight of him leaning on me. He's muttering in Polish, drooling a little, and I'm thinking, what the fuck did I just sign up for? Later, Natalia tells me it wasn't the first time. He'd had these episodes before. Not always this bad, but bad enough. And she says it like it's normal, like it's just part of life. And I realize this is her world. This chaos, this violence, this madness, it's baked into her. That was the night I knew I couldn't stay with her. Not 'cause of her, not really, but 'cause of the weight of her family, her past, her chaos. It was too much. I wanted to love her, but I couldn't survive her world. I'll never forget the sound of that iron post slamming into the ground, the way the street shook under my feet, the way neighbors screamed and car alarms wailed. It was pure New York insanity, the kind of story you tell years later and people laugh. Except it wasn't funny. Not then. Not ever. I never thought making an OkCupid account would screw with my head the way it did. Honestly, I only signed up because a friend kept nagging me. "Come on, Lisa, everyone's on there," she said. "It's not just creeps." Yeah, right. That was a lie if I ever heard one. At first, it was interesting, addicting even. Messages pinging in, scrolling through profiles at night like I was shopping for something I didn't even know I wanted. But within a week, the shine wore off. Too many weirdos, too much time wasted. Guys who led with "Hey sexy," or dudes who were 20 years older pretending to be 28. I wasn't looking for that. I wasn't looking for a one-night stand. I wanted something real. A relationship. Something steady, not sloppy hookups in the backseat of a car. That's probably why I stuck around when John messaged me. He didn't come at me with anything sleazy. His first message was thoughtful, funny even. He said he'd noticed in my profile that I was apprenticing at an auto shop and asked me what kind of engines I liked working on. That caught me off guard. Most guys wanted to talk about how cute I looked in my picture or what my body type was. But John, he wanted to talk shop. That was different. That felt good. He told me he was only 24, but had already done a ton. He'd been an Air Force mechanic, traveled all over Europe and Asia, and was now driving long-haul trucks to save money for more trips. Honestly, it sounded insane. Who does all that before 25? But the way he told it, matter of fact, not braggy, it seemed believable. It was a little red flag, but I pushed it aside because he made me laugh. And at the time, I needed that. We started talking every night. Literally every single night. I'd get home from work, crash on the couch, and there he'd be, texting me, calling me, telling me stories about life on the road. Sometimes he'd give me solid advice about working in the shop, like which tools were worth splurging on, or how to avoid a boss lowballing you on hours. He seemed supportive, funny, grounded. It was like having a long-distance boyfriend, without the mess of physical stuff. But then it changed. It was one of those late-night conversations, me half asleep, him rambling about something when he said it. A little slip, a throwaway detail. But the second it left his mouth, every hair on the back of my neck stood up. He said my ex's mom's name. Clear as day. First and last. I froze. My stomach dropped. I hadn't told him that. Not once. Hell, I hadn't even told him I had an ex, let alone his mom's name. It wasn't the kind of thing you casually mention. Wait, I said, trying to sound casual even though my heart was hammering. How do you know that name? Silence on his end. Then a nervous little laugh. Oh, did I say that? Must have mixed it up with someone else. Bullshit. I pressed him, and the more I pushed, the more his mask slipped. That's when it all came out. He hadn't just Googled me. He hadn't just looked at my Facebook. He had stalked me. He admitted he knew every address I'd ever lived at. Every job I'd ever worked. He'd scraped through old social media accounts, LinkedIn, tagged photos, everything. He'd pieced together my life like some psychotic puzzle. I even know where you are now, he said, his voice calm, almost proud. Within 6 city blocks. I felt sick. My skin went cold. I wanted to vomit. Do you know what it's like to realize someone out there has been tracing your whole life like you're a crime scene? Someone you've never met in person, never given permission, knows your past, your present, maybe even your future? It's like being stripped naked in the middle of Times Square. Vulnerable, exposed, and laughed at. I ended the call. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the phone. I barely slept that night, just lay there staring at the ceiling, imagining his truck parked outside my apartment, headlights cutting through my blinds. The next morning I went nuclear. I changed my phone number, deleted my OkCupid account, made new social profiles, locked everything down. I scrubbed myself from the internet as best I could. My friends teased me. "Lisa, you're being dramatic, nothing happened." But they didn't get it. I wasn't just scared. I was hunted. For a while, things went quiet. Months went by. I started to relax, convincing myself maybe I'd overreacted. Maybe he really had just been some awkward dude who went too far online. Maybe he'd gotten bored and moved on. Then the text came. New number. I didn't recognize it. I almost ignored it. But curiosity got me, and when I opened it, my blood froze. We could have traveled together. You said you had nothing tying you down. I thought you were perfect. My phone slipped out of my hands and clattered onto the floor. My chest clenched so hard I thought I was having a heart attack. It was him. John. After all that time, he still had me in his head. He still thought about me. And worse, he still had my number, even after I'd changed it. Which meant he'd found me again. Somehow. That was the moment I knew this wasn't some harmless crush. This wasn't just a guy being awkward or overeager. This was obsession. For weeks after that, I lived like I was being watched. Every time I left my apartment, I scanned the street for a truck idling nearby. Every time I walked to the auto shop, I felt eyes on my back. I stopped going out alone at night. Stopped answering numbers I didn't recognize. Hell, I barely slept, lying in bed with my heart pounding, convinced that at any moment I'd hear a knock at the door and see his face through the peephole. Nothing ever happened. He never showed up in person, never contacted me again after that last text. But that didn't matter. The damage was already done. I always hate starting a video with "this just happened," but this just happened. And if you're watching from anywhere near DC, you'll probably recognize the places I'm about to name. I live in Arlington, Virginia, glass towers and chain coffee shops, metros humming under your feet, and people who can look normal while hiding 1,000 weird little secrets. Turns out, one of those secrets was named James. I'll own my first mistake. I downloaded Tinder at the start of the month, against my better judgment and against that little voice in my head that sounds like my aunt from Silver Spring saying, "Baby, there's no soft landings on those apps." But it was a dreary week, and the only thing more depressing than my fridge was my Netflix continue watching row. I matched with a handful of guys. James was the standout, decent-looking, sharp jaw, kind eyes, texts that came in full sentences, like with punctuation, and a meme game that hovered just on the right side of cringe. We moved from the app to texting that same day, flowed quick, and he seemed really into me. Not the clingy kind of into me, the excited kind, which felt nice. He told me early about the ex. He didn't use her name. He called her the crazy one, which should have been my second mistake, listening to a man who introduces his ex as a diagnosis. He said she'd been abusive, hit him with a frying pan, pepper sprayed him once, that she was off her meds. I was wary, but I also know abusive relationships trap people in cycles, and sometimes men don't get believed when they talk about it. I asked the gentle questions. How long were you together? Was there a reason you stayed? His answers were thin. She tried to baby trap him, had a miscarriage. He felt obligated. He said it like reading cue cards in his head. Still, our first date, which we kept tame because I'm not trying to end up as a Dateline segment, was at the AMC courthouse on Wilson Boulevard. Loud, public, and saturated with buttered popcorn. We watched something loud enough to drown out awkwardness, then talked for hours in the lobby afterward while the staff mopped around us. He had a little Nova clip in his voice. Look, I'm just saying. The soft, fast cadence of a guy who's been stuck in Beltway traffic his entire adult life. I went home smiling. I told my roommate, I think he's normal. Remember that line. Because the next morning, he texted to say he'd hooked up with his ex the night before and wanted to work things out. The whiplash almost gave me a nosebleed. I said, hey, that's fine. Wishing you the best. Mildly insulting that I'd lost out to the woman he described as an assault with legs, but I've retired from the Olympics of competing with strangers' chaos. A few hours later, he was back. She's still crazy. Thought she changed. She didn't. Can I see you? Just 5 minutes. 4 to 5 minutes. Let me explain. Pushy. Begging. I'm nearby. We have a connection. I responded politely. I don't want to be involved with someone clearly hung up on his ex. He admitted he still was. And then he sent the message that flipped the day from inconvenient to insane. I want you to meet her. She wants to meet you. She can tell if you're better for me than she is. She wants me to be happy. Read that again. He wanted me to stand in front of his ex, the woman he'd slept with the night before, and audition for the role of better girlfriend. Like I'm reading sides for a community theater production called Who Gets the Man-Child. No, I wrote, and for a second my hands shook. That's not what love is, and I want no part of it. He pivoted from pleading to punishing in under a minute. The mask slid off. I swear you could hear the clatter. The text went from please to you're not that special to we have a beautiful love you could never understand. Then, my wife knows where you work. Wife. I put the phone down like it burned me, then picked it up again, thumbs clumsy. If that's a threat, I wrote, I'll go to the police. He moved fast, manic, words tripping over themselves. She's been to jail. She's not afraid. She loves me so much she'd mess anyone up. She'd kill your friends if they tried to protect you. She's armed and dangerous. My stomach dropped hard enough to bruise. I worked the closing shift that night. Armed and dangerous, painted my entire evening the color of a bruise. Every customer who lingered near the door felt like a problem dressed in a coat. I looked out the plate glass and saw my reflection double, then triple, then a shape move behind the parked cars like a silhouette in a fish tank. Before my shift, I went to the Arlington County Police Department on 10th Street. I hate cold fluorescent lighting. I hate explaining myself to strangers. I hate the way I always feel like I'm making a scene when I'm just trying not to become one. A cop took my statement, eyebrows up at some of the phrasing. He said because the threat wasn't direct, because he didn't type, I am going to kill you. They couldn't do much. You did the right thing, he said. Block and report. Keep your eyes open. Tell work. The guy might be full of it. He added so casually the sentence that keeps replaying in my head. Some people get off on that kind of scare. I walked out into the winter dusk, sky the color of tin. The Ballston MU station hummed across the way, people moving under my feet like blood cells. I told my manager everything. He nodded solemnly and said he'd keep an eye on the door. We were both pretending the word wife wasn't a grenade rolling around our ankles. Back at home, my roommate, who grew up in Hyattsville and can sniff danger like a fox, helped me layer our front door chain with a second set of screws. Men who need an audience, she said, are louder than men who need a victim, but sometimes they're the same man. We're not assuming he's all talk. I was brushing my teeth at 10:42 p.m. when my phone vibrated with a new number. I shouldn't have answered. Curiosity has a sad little choke chain on me. I swiped green. Hi, sweetheart. A woman's voice, sing-song, almost a Sunday school lilt. The kind older southern cousin accent you hear floating around Northern Virginia sometimes. Transplants, military families, a little drawl that makes the vowels elbow room. You must be her. No, I said too soft. You texted my husband, she cooed. You told him to leave me. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the closet door. My closet doesn't lock. Why was that the first thing I thought? I told him to not involve me. You called me crazy. The cheer clipped. The sound sharpened, went brittle. You don't know me. She started texting while she spoke. My screen bloomed with messages from a different number, then a third, spoofed probably. The texts were choked with insults and static, words mashed so hard together they shredded. One clean sentence swam up through the trash. I was his wife before you were anyone. Where are you? I asked. Why? She laughed, a flat, breathy bark. So you can call the cops again? They can't do anything. Ask them. Then, conversationally, the way you tell someone the weather. Tell me what color wreath you have on your office door. For a second, the room angled wrong. I stood, hit speaker, and crossed to my window. The street below was ordinary. A jogger, a dog tugging at an icy patch, the blue blink of a rideshare. I was 5 floors up. The office itself was down Wilson Boulevard, a short bus ride away, its lobby camera pointed at a Christmas wreath my boss refused to take down. The wreath had a thin red ribbon. It tilted left. My throat went dry. I ended the call and stared at the text, cute wreath with a blurry photo attached. It was unmistakably our lobby. Same scuffed tile, same poster half peeled in the corner. It was taken from outside, through the glass. The reflection in the door showed a shape, dark coat, hood up, a hand holding a phone. No face. I reported the numbers. I filed the screenshots. I stacked the digital proof like sandbags against some coming flood, and still felt the water creep over them, cold at the ankles. I blocked them all. My chest felt packed with buzzing. I didn't sleep, didn't even lay down. I sat on the floor with my back against the door like I was in a movie that would never end, listening to traffic, to my own breath, to the elevator chime down the hall. Midnight, 1 a.m., 2:07, 3:33. Every time the elevator sighed, I pictured it opening to a woman with a soft drawl and hard hands. Morning felt like a trick. The sun came up a flat, watery gray. I went to work because I couldn't stay home and vibrate in place. My manager walked me from the bus stop like a dad at prom. We stepped into the lobby. The wreath was crooked. A single strip of the red ribbon had been cut clean off, like someone had taken a scissor to the tail and pocketed it. Maybe it just fell, my manager said. There was no ribbon on the floor. I tried to be a person that day. I rang up coffee. I answered questions about bagel flavors like I had any space in my head for sesame versus everything. At 11:13, a guy in a worn Maryland plate sedan idled across the street, engine ticking white breath into the cold. He didn't come in. He didn't pull away. He just idled. When a cop car rolled past, he drove off like nothing at all. I told myself he was waiting for someone. I told myself a lot of things I didn't believe. At 12:09, another text from another unfamiliar number. I didn't open it. I left my phone face down on the counter, like a little coaster for doom. My manager read it first and mouthed "Don't." I looked anyway. "You blocked me," it said. "That doesn't change that we know where you work." We. You know how a word can make your body colder than any weather? We. Plural threat. More than one person's hands. More than one set of eyes. I tasted metal. I don't know if it was from fear or from biting my tongue hard enough to draw a little blood. I made it to closing. My manager wouldn't let me leave alone. We stood in the back and pretended to talk inventory, while he called his wife to say he'd be late. I went to the restroom and stared at myself, the face of someone who hadn't slept and was pretending she had. When I came out, there were 2 customers left in the shop. A woman with a stroller, and a man in a navy hoodie, hood up. He didn't order. He stood near the napkins, head bent like he was reading the seasonal drink list. I told myself he was shy. I told myself a lot of things. "Can I help you?" I asked, and my voice sounded like someone ran it through gravel. He didn't look up. He adjusted the hood. He worked the corner of a napkin between his fingers until it twisted tight and broke. "Sir?" He lifted his head. It wasn't James. It wasn't anyone I recognized. Pale, clean-shaven, eyes the color of dishwater. He considered me like you consider a painting you're not sure you like. He dropped the napkin into the trash and left without a word. We locked the door. My manager walked me all the way to the metro, through the gusting wind tunnel that smells like brake dust and pennies. Down on the platform, I could feel my nerves zinging, every glance magnetic, like I was wearing a sandwich board that said Target. A red line train blew in sighing. I got on, took a seat facing the glass so I could watch the reflection of the whole car. A trio of high schoolers in neon hoodies, a woman balancing a tote bag with a cat's face on it, a guy in a suit nodding off. Normal. Boring. Blessedly boring. I clung to boring like a raft. By the time I got home, I was so tired I felt drunk. The elevator jingled wrong, 2 chimes instead of 1, probably a glitch. The hallway smelled like someone's microwave dinner. My roommate had left the chain on the door unlocked, so I could slide it. I went in, locked it behind me, checked the peephole, which showed the same strip of beige carpet, the same fire extinguisher, the same nothing. I showered. I cried, but the kind of small cry that just leaks out because your body can't hold any more adrenaline. I curled up on the couch with the TV volume capped low. Outside, the wind bullied the bare trees, made them scratch at the windows like they were trying to draw maps. My phone vibrated once, on the coffee table. I looked at my roommate. She shook her head. "Don't." I let it sit there, a tiny thing that somehow weighed as much as a truck. 1 buzz. 2. 3. Then silence. We watched a sitcom about people whose biggest problem is forgetting a friend's birthday. I clung to their pretend lives like they were warm. In the morning, I did a small, brave thing. I called ACPD again. I gave them the new numbers, the photo of the wreath, the lobby shot. They told me to keep documenting, to vary my routes, to tell a neighbor to walk with me when I could. I told my building manager. He nodded grimly and promised more patrols, more cameras, more something. It felt like throwing rice at a hurricane. I should have trusted my gut the second I saw the chessboard. But let me back up. This started on a dating app, Tinder. His name was D, older guy, mid-40s, salt and pepper hair. We texted for a short while. He offered to pick me up for our first date. Another red flag, but I said yes. When he pulled up in this shiny black sedan, I felt like I was stepping into someone else's life. The kind where you're whisked away to fancy restaurants and expensive wine, not tacos and cheap beer. I climbed in, smelled his cologne, musky, heavy, the kind that tries too hard, and I thought, okay, maybe this could be fun. Instead of a restaurant, he suggested going back to his place. He said he wanted to cook for me. I hesitated, but his voice had this calm confidence, like he'd already planned the night, and I was just along for the ride. We get to his apartment, and the first thing I notice is the smell. Old laundry mixed with stale pizza. His living room looked like a frat house that had aged badly. Empty bottles, dirty socks, a couch with suspicious stains. I was already thinking about how quickly I could order an Uber when he clapped his hands together and said, "Let's play chess." He dragged out this beat-up wooden board, pieces chipped, pawns missing their heads. "This," he said, "is how I know if we're compatible." He wasn't joking. His eyes lit up like a man about to reveal the secrets of the universe. I laughed, thinking it was quirky, maybe even cute. He didn't laugh back. He set the board, handed me the white pieces, and leaned back in his chair like a king waiting for tribute. The first 5 minutes were fine. He made little comments about strategy, testing me. But when I beat him in one move he didn't see coming, his entire face changed. His jaw clenched. His hands twitched. And suddenly, he wasn't charming anymore. He was angry. "You just got lucky," he muttered. "Play again." I agreed, even though I was already uncomfortable. This time, I made a mistake on purpose. He smirked when he caught it. "See? That's better. You're learning." "Learning what?" "That men like him only like you when you're a little smaller, a little weaker, a little easier to beat." The chess game turned into a test I didn't remember signing up for. Every time I made a bold move, he snapped at me. Every time I hesitated, he praised me. It wasn't about chess. It was about control. He wanted me to lose gracefully, to feed his ego, to play the role he'd written for me in his head. And then, he touched me. Not in some sweet, flirty way. Not in a gentle brush of hands. No. He leaned across the board, grabbed my wrist hard enough to leave marks, and said, "I like women who know when to surrender." That's when my stomach turned. He wasn't talking about chess anymore. I pulled my hand back. "I think I should go." His smile vanished. "No. We're not done." He stood up, towering over me, pacing like a caged animal. His tone swung from pleading to furious in seconds. "You don't get it. You're supposed to be mine. You're supposed to listen. That's the whole point." I told him I wasn't comfortable, that I needed to leave. He slammed his hand on the table, so hard the chess pieces flew. The sound echoed through the dirty apartment. "Sit down," he barked. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't about a date anymore. This was about power. He didn't care if I liked him. He didn't care if I wanted to stay. He cared about winning. My heart was racing. I thought about the Uber app, my roommate, the fact that no one knew where I was except him. He leaned close, so close I could smell whiskey on his breath. "You don't walk out on me. You hear me? Nobody walks out on me." His eyes were wild. And for 1 second, I thought he was going to hit me. Instead, he grabbed my face and kissed me, hard, rough, unwanted. His stubble scratched my skin. His tongue shoved into my mouth like an invasion. I shoved him back, my voice shaking. "Don't touch me." He froze. For a moment, I saw the tiniest flicker of shame, or maybe just surprise that I dared push back. Then he laughed, low and ugly. "Fine. You're not ready for a man like me anyway." I bolted for the door. He followed, shouting. His voice ricocheted off the hallway walls as I fumbled with the lock. "You'll regret this. You'll come crawling back. You'll see I'm the only one who cares enough to test you." I slammed the door and sprinted down the stairs, chest burning, legs trembling. I didn't stop until I was outside, the freezing desert night air biting my skin. I ordered an Uber with shaking hands, watching every shadow like it might lunge at me. When the car finally pulled up, I nearly collapsed into the back seat. The driver asked if I was okay. I lied. Said I was fine. Said I just had a bad date. He gave me a look in the mirror that said he didn't believe me. But he drove me home, and I locked my apartment door behind me, and I sat on the floor shaking until dawn. The next morning, my phone buzzed with messages. D apologizing. D begging me to come back. D raging that I was a tease and a coward. D swearing he'd never let anyone treat me better than him. I blocked him. He made new numbers. I blocked those too. The last message he sent before I changed my number still makes my skin crawl. You failed the test. But don't worry, I'll always be watching. Maybe it was a bluff. Maybe he was just a bitter old man with a dirty apartment and a bruised ego. But every time I pass a chessboard in a bar, or see someone setting up pieces in a park, my throat tightens. Because I don't see pawns and queens and bishops anymore. I see a man who thought life was a game he could rig. And I see myself, trapped on the wrong side of the board, with no way out except to run. She opened the door barefoot, like she'd been waiting for me all night. Flowing dress, incense smoke curling behind her, and this manic smile that was equal parts welcome home, lover, and I'm about to eat your soul. Before I could even say hi, she kissed my cheek, grabbed my wrist, and pulled me inside like I was late to a seance. Her apartment looked like a witchcraft starter kit exploded. Candles everywhere, half of them burned down to pools of wax that had hardened over stacks of books. Crystals on every surface, jars with herbs, or teeth. I swear one had teeth, lined up on a crooked shelf. And right in the middle of it all, on the kitchen counter, a fat gray cat licking at a bowl of melted wax. That's Rasputin, she said like it was perfectly normal. Like the Russian guy? I asked. She gave me this sly smile. Exactly. He's been with me before. Before what? Before sanity? Dinner was already steaming on the table, if you can call it that. Some kind of vegan stew, dark green, smelling like soil and cumin. She sat me down, poured 2 chipped glasses of red wine, and told me to eat. I did. Because I'm polite. And because I was trying not to picture whatever had been inside those jars staring at me. She talked the whole time. Not small talk. Not, how was your day? Or what music do you like? No, Elise opened with, I was shot in the head in 1918, and I can still feel it sometimes when I dream. I almost dropped my spoon. She leaned forward, eyes wide and glimmering. I was Anastasia Romanoff in my last life. Do you know what it feels like to die with your family screaming around you? I choked down the stew and said, That's heavy. She nodded seriously, like she'd just given me the weather report. You look familiar, Joe. Maybe you were the czar. The one who abandoned me. I laughed nervously. I work at Best Buy. She didn't laugh. When dinner was over, she didn't clear the dishes. She grabbed my hand, tugged me into the living room, and stood me in front of an altar. I don't even know what else to call it. A low table covered in candles, tiny animal skulls, bones, feathers, and dead serious, a mason jar with something floating in cloudy liquid. She poured whiskey into a chipped shot glass, dipped her fingers, and smeared it across my forehead. Cold, sticky. It dripped into my eye, burned like hell. For blessing, she whispered. Cool, I muttered, rubbing at my face. Yeah, I love whiskey blessings. She smiled like a teacher pleased with her student. The spirit's like you. Then she dropped to the floor on all fours. Not sexy. Not playful. Elise crawled around me, back arched, hissing, eyes wide. Rasputin joined in, tail puffed, both of them circling me like I was about to be sacrificed. Do you like kittens, Joe? She purred. My brain short-circuited. This was not foreplay. This was possession. I backed up, mumbling something about needing the bathroom, but she blocked the hallway, still crawling, nails scraping the floor. Then she lunged at my leg, clawing at my jeans. Don't run from me. I'll make you purr too. Nope, I said, yanking free. Nope, nope, nope. That's when she snapped. 1 second she was kitten crawling. The next she was standing, screaming in my face. You don't appreciate me. You're just like the others. You think I'm crazy. I held up my hands. I didn't say that. You're thinking it, she spat. She stormed into the kitchen, and for one terrifying second, I thought she was going for a knife. Instead, she came back with a massive bundle of sage, lit it, and started waving it around my head like she was trying to swat demons out of me. Smoke poured into my eyes. I coughed, choking, while she screamed, I'm cleansing your fear. I staggered toward the door, eyes watering, lungs on fire. She slammed it shut before I could reach it, pinning me with shocking strength. You're not leaving until you admit who you are. Elise, I'm Joe. I sell TVs. I am not the Tsar of Russia. Her face twisted into pure rage. Liar. She shoved me against the wall and kissed me. It wasn't a kiss, it was an assault. Her mouth crashed into mine, wet and suffocating, her her tongue forcing its way in like she was trying to steal the air out of my lungs. I shoved her back, heart hammering. "Don't touch me," I snapped. She froze. For half a second, I thought she'd calm down. Instead, she laughed. Low, bitter, ugly. "You're scared. I like that." I grabbed my jacket and made for the door. She followed, screaming, her voice echoing through the hallway. "You'll regret this. The curse will follow you, Joe. You'll never be free of me." Neighbors peeked out of doors, shook their heads like this was just another Tuesday in Portland, and shut them again. I bolted down the stairs, out into the night air, lungs burning with sage smoke. I didn't stop running until I was 3 blocks away. My phone buzzed before I even got home. Elise. Paragraphs of texts. Apologies. Threats. Confessions. More threats. "You don't understand my power. If you won't be mine in this life, you'll be mine in the next." Blocked her. She made a new number. Blocked that too. Rinse, repeat. For 2 days straight, she flooded my phone with every possible variation of "you belong to me." I half expected to wake up with Rasputin on my chest, claws in my throat, Elise standing over me chanting in Russian. A week later, I was walking down Hawthorne when I saw her. Elise. On the corner. With another guy, poor bastard, hanging on her every word. She looked up, saw me, and smiled. Slow, deliberate. Like she knew something I didn't. I ducked into a bookstore and hid there until she was gone. So yeah, that's my story. Dinner with Elise, reincarnated Russian princess, shaman in training, cursed distributor, cat impersonator. I should have known Pete was going to be a problem when he showed up to our first date with a duffel bag in his trunk. Not a gym bag, not a work bag, a duffel bag, and he made sure I saw it, like a magician leaving the deck of cards half out of his sleeve. But I'll get there. Pete looked fine on the app. Not hot, but normal, which honestly is rarer than you'd think these days. His bio was boring. Love the outdoors, love good food, family is everything. The kind of bland *T people write when they're just trying to fill space. But his pictures showed him smiling with a dog, hiking at Torrey Pines, standing in front of Petco Park. Harmless. San Diego guy. So we meet up at a coffee shop in North Park, one of those trendy spots where everyone's in thrifted jeans and pretending to write a screenplay. He's taller than I expected, kind of quiet, but polite. The date is fine. Not fireworks, but not a train wreck either. I figure, okay, maybe he's just shy. Then, toward the end, he asks, "So can I come see your place?" Excuse me? We'd known each other for 45 minutes, max. I laugh it off, thinking he's joking. But no, he keeps pressing. I just feel like we should spend more time together. I want to see where you live. I tell him no firmly. I don't let strange men into my apartment on the first date. He pouts. Literally pouts, like I just told him Santa isn't real. Then he says, "That's okay. We'll get there. We'll get there." Like it's a given. Like my apartment is part of some 5-year plan. I should have walked away right there. But I'm stupidly polite. I tell him I need to go run errands, thank him for coffee, and head to my car. He follows me outside, still trying to charm me. I give him the thanks, "I'll text you" line and drive off. End of story, right? Wrong. That night, my phone lights up. Pete. Had a great time. Fine. Normal. Then, wish I could have seen your place. Less fine. Then, what's your address again? Again. He never had it in the first place. I ignore it. The next day, more texts. I was in your neighborhood. Thought about dropping by. Do you have a balcony? What floor are you on? The man went from coffee date to Zillow stalker in under 24 hours. I keep my responses short. Eventually I stop responding at all. That's when he starts showing up. First time, I'm walking home from work, and who do I see leaning against his car across the street from my building? Pete. Waving like we planned this. "Hey," he calls. "I figured I'd surprise you. I don't even slow down. You shouldn't be here. Come on, just a few minutes. I brought my bag." He actually pats the duffel in his trunk like it's our child. "What's in the bag?" I ask, half terrified. He smiles. "Just stuff." Nope. I go upstairs, lock my door, and spend the whole night checking the peephole like a paranoid raccoon. Eventually he leaves, but not before texting me. "You've got a nice lobby." Excuse me? Nice lobby? Which means he went inside. Which means he tried to figure out which door was mine. The next week, same thing. Different day, different time, Pete's car parked across from my building. He doesn't even try to hide it. He texts me photos, the view of my street, the bench by the bus stop, even a shot of my building's front doors. So cozy, he captions it, like we're on House Hunters. I block his number. He starts messaging me on WhatsApp. I block him there. He finds me on Instagram, even though my account is private. Sends me a follow request with the bio updated to say, future husband of my name. I show my friends. They tell me to go to the police. I try, but the cop at the desk tells me unless he makes a direct threat, there's not much they can do. Keep documenting, he says. Great. I'll just keep building my scrapbook of reasons Pete shouldn't be within 50 feet of me. The texts escalate. One night, I can see your lights are on. Are you up? Another. What are you cooking? Smells good. I wasn't cooking. I wasn't even home. That meant he was there, watching my apartment, imagining me inside. I panic call my best friend. She drives over, picks me up, and I crash on her couch for 3 nights. When I finally go back to my place, there's something waiting for me. A bag. Not just any bag. His duffel. Sitting in front of my door like a F***ed-up welcome mat. Inside, clothes, a toothbrush, deodorant, a pair of boxers, and, this is the part that makes my skin crawl, a toothbrush holder. Not just the toothbrush. A whole cup. And on the side of the cup, my name, written in Sharpie. Like he was moving in. Like this was already decided. I gagged, shoved the bag back out into the hallway, and called the building manager. He reviewed the camera footage. There was Pete, clear as day, hauling his bag in and setting it at my door, smiling at the camera like it was a F***king sitcom. The building filed a trespass warning. I filed another report with the cops, but again, no threats, no violence, just enthusiastic courtship. Their words, not mine. Meanwhile, Pete doubled down online. More burner accounts. More messages. The last one before I nuked all my socials was a photo of him standing outside a taco shop I'd posted about weeks earlier. Caption, date night? I matched with this guy on Meet Me, a mistake, I know. That app's basically Craigslist personals with push notifications, where desperation and delusion swipe right on each other all night long. But it was 1 a.m., my brain was mush, and I was thumb-scrolling through the same recycled gym selfies and blurry bathroom shots. Then his face popped up. He looked normalish. Hoodie, ball cap, generic smile that said, "Trust me, I don't live with my mom." His bio was bland enough to be safe. At that hour, safe seemed like a win. So I swiped. Famous last words. 10 minutes into chatting, he asked for nudes. Not even a warm-up question, just straight to send pics. I shot him down. Not happening. That should have been the end. Instead, he sent a winky face, then, "You don't understand. You owe me." "Excuse me? Owe you what?" I barely owed him correct spelling of his name. But he wasn't joking. He started typing like a bad crime drama villain. "I have connections. I know people who can make you disappear." Then the big one. "I've got a guy named Aegon. You have 24 hours. I laughed. Out loud. Because who the hell threatens to hire a hitman over nudes? That's like calling in an airstrike because your DoorDash forgot the fries. And Aegon? Really? What's he gonna do? Ride in on a dragon and confiscate my camera roll? I blocked him, satisfied, and went to bed thinking I'd just collected a weird story to tell my friends. Nope. Next morning, new account, same guy. TikTok. You're already on the list. The persistence was unnerving. And then came the message that made my stomach drop. He typed out the name of my town. Not my exact address, but close enough. "Easy to find you," he wrote. "Your face is out there. You made it easy." That's when fear crept in. Because yeah, my face is out there. Instagram, TikTok, old tagged photos from college. If he cared enough, he could connect the dots. And he wanted me to know he was trying. All day the threats poured in. Aegon doesn't miss. Police can't help you. I've got eyes everywhere. It was cartoon villain *T, but the relentlessness wore me down. Every buzz of my phone felt like a countdown timer. That night I walked home from the library, and the feeling of being followed sank into my bones. Every street lamp shadow felt stretched too long, every slow car deliberate. My instincts screamed you're being watched. By the time I reached my door, I was shaking so hard I dropped my keys twice. I locked myself inside, curtains shut, phone buzzing nonstop with his live tweet style commentary. "Nice walk tonight. You should look behind you more. You speed up when you're scared." Cute. My throat went dry. Maybe he was guessing fishing. But the timing was too perfect. At 3:13 a.m., there was a knock. Not loud, Just 2 soft taps. Somehow worse than banging. I crept to the peephole. Nothing. Just the hallway and the buzzing exit sign. An hour later, when I finally opened the door, my doormat was flipped upside down. That was it. Proof. He wasn't just typing fantasies, he'd been here. I went to the police the next morning, screenshots organized like evidence. The officer barely looked at them. Unless there's a direct threat and proof he's local, there's not much we can do. He said he has a hitman. I insisted. The cop smirked. If he had a hitman, you wouldn't be here. Thanks, officer. Real confidence booster. So yeah, that's the story of how a random dude on a bottom-tier app turned my phone into a weapon against me. Maybe Aegon was fake. Maybe the guy was all talk. But I still check my peephole 3 times before opening the door. I still flinch when my phone buzzes at night. I didn't tell anyone where I was going that night. That's the detail that still makes my stomach knot when I think about it. 1 text to a friend, 1 Snapchat check-in, even a vague heading out on my story might have been enough. But I didn't. I just went. Her name was Alice. She looked young, my age, early 20s. Pretty in a casual way, eyeliner sharp, smile easy. The kind of girl who gave off energy like she'd be fun to hang out with. Maybe drink cheap vodka on someone's balcony at 2 in the morning. Nothing serious. Her profile was a stream of neon selfies, captions about living wild. The usual language of someone who wants you to think they're spontaneous. She messaged me first. You down to chill tonight? It was impulsive, reckless even, but I was bored. I said yes. She sent me an address, an apartment complex on the edge of downtown. I told myself it was fine. I told myself people met like this all the time. When I pulled up, Alice wasn't alone. A man was standing with her outside, tall, mid-20s, shoulders that filled his shirt in a way that suggested time at the gym. "This is Ben," she said when I got out. Her voice was too light, too practiced. Ben didn't say hello. He just looked at me. Not curious, not even unfriendly, just a flat stare, like I was a problem he hadn't decided how to solve. I should have left then, but leaving felt awkward, like breaking some unspoken social rule, so I followed them upstairs. Their apartment was small, cluttered, and smelled like weed and cheap cologne. Clothes piled on the couch. Pizza boxes stacked in the corner. Phones lined neatly on the coffee table like props. Alice laughed easily, moving around the space like it was a stage. Ben sat in the armchair, silent, his eyes following me with that same heavy stare. Alice poured me a drink. Already mixed, already in a glass. I refused as politely as I could, but I saw her smile falter. And I saw Ben's jaw tighten. The conversation started harmless enough, Alice asking the usual questions, trying to keep things light. But then Ben leaned forward. His voice was steady, deliberate. "You looking to make real money?" It landed wrong. Too serious. Too rehearsed. Alice leaned closer, her perfume cloying. "Yeah," she said, "like fast money. You don't even have to think about it." Ben added, "We take care of people who stick with us. But you gotta be serious. You gotta be loyal." That word, loyal, hung heavy in the room. I tried to laugh it off, said I already had a job. Alice pouted like a child denied candy. Ben didn't smile. I stood, made some excuse about needing to work early. Alice's laugh was sharp now, brittle. "You're not scared, are you?" "Not at all," I lied. My heart was pounding so loud it felt like it filled the space between us. Ben stood too, stepping in front of the door just long enough for me to feel the weight of it. Then slowly he moved aside. His message was clear. I could leave, but only because he allowed it. I didn't breathe until I was in my car with the doors locked. That should have been the end. But later that night, my phone lit up. Alice again. "You'd be perfect. Don't waste this chance." I didn't respond. 2 hours later, a new number. "Ben doesn't like when people waste his time." The next day, another. "We know where you live." I blocked them all. But for weeks afterward, I felt watched. Every car that slowed near my apartment made my chest tighten. Every knock at my door made my blood run cold. I still don't know exactly what they wanted. Drugs? Trafficking? Some kind of scheme that started with charm and ended with control. But I know this, it wasn't a date. It wasn't even about me as a person. I was a target. Alice played the bait, bright, pretty, disarming. Ben was the closer, the wait, the one who made sure you knew that leaving wasn't simple. Together they were a trap, waiting for someone reckless enough to walk into it. I got lucky. I walked out before the door locked behind me. But I still think about how easily I could have stayed. Had a drink. Tried to prove I wasn't scared. Convinced myself it was harmless. Sometimes surviving isn't about being brave. It's about listening when every nerve in your body whispers run. That night I did. And I'm still here to write about it. The match notification pinged at 2:47 a.m. Brian's profile showed a crooked smile and arms that suggested he knew his way around a gym. His opening message was refreshingly normal. Hey, what kind of music are you into? No dick pics, no immediate demands to host. In the wasteland of late-night grinder, this passed for charming. I live in Bywater, he texted after we'd exchanged a few messages about indie bands. Got roommates, but my room's private. Wanna come chill? I should have said no. Should have listened to that little voice that whispers warnings at 3 a.m. when you're making decisions with parts of your anatomy that aren't your brain. Instead, I grabbed my keys. The house was a typical New Orleans shotgun, paint peeling like sunburned skin. Brian met me at the door, and in person, he was exactly what his photos promised, cute in that slightly dangerous way that makes smart people do stupid things. He led me down a narrow hallway that smelled like incense, and something else I couldn't identify. This is me, he said, pushing open his bedroom door. The smell hit me first. Patchily, yes, but underneath it something sour and organic, like flowers left too long in water. Then I saw the room itself, and every rational thought I'd ever had started screaming in unison. Candles covered every surface, dozens of them in various states of melt, wax pooling on milk crates and windowsills like frozen tears. The walls were draped with dark fabric, and in the corner sat what could only be described as an altar. Cinder blocks supported a piece of plywood, and on top of that, jars filled with herbs, bones, and things floating in murky liquid that I didn't want to examine too closely. At the center of it all sat a doll with its eyes sewn shut with thick black thread. This is interesting, I managed, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. Brian's face lit up like I'd just complimented his mother's cooking. You like it? I do workings here. The energy in this room is incredible. Workings, spells, bindings, whatever needs doing. He said it the way someone might mention they were into CrossFit. The mattress on the floor was covered with black sheets that looked like they'd seen better decades. The floorboards were sticky under my sneakers, and I found myself calculating the distance to the door. 15 feet, maybe 20 if I had to dodge around him. But then Brian smiled, really smiled, and for a moment the room's oppressive atmosphere lifted. He put on music, something ambient and hypnotic, and sat close enough that I could smell his cologne mixing with the incense. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe eccentric was just his thing. Drink? He asked, producing a chipped glass filled with something dark. The liquid reeked of whiskey and cloves, with an underlying chemical tang that made my sinuses burn. I took a polite sip and immediately regretted it. Jesus, what is this? My own recipe, he said, watching me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. Family tradition. I set the glass down on the floor, trying not to grimace. That's when his mood shifted, like someone had flipped a switch behind his eyes. Why aren't you drinking? The playful tone was gone, replaced by something flat and cold. It's just really strong, I said, forcing a laugh. Maybe we could. You don't respect me. He stood up abruptly, and I noticed how his hands had curled into fists. You walk into my sacred space, and you judge me. I'm not judging anything, I said, but he was already pacing, muttering under his breath in what sounded like Latin mixed with gibberish. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Then he spun around and lunged at me, grabbing my face with both hands and kissing me so violently I tasted blood. His stubble scraped my skin raw, and when I pushed him away, he laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You think you can just leave? He asked, and his right hand slowly curled into a fist. He raised it, and for a heartbeat that lasted forever, I was certain he was going to punch me in the face. Instead, he held it there, trembling with restraint, like he was savoring the moment. The spirits told me you'd come tonight, he whispered. They told me you'd try to leave. That was enough. I grabbed my jacket and bolted for the door, but he was right behind me, shouting words that might have been curses or might have been nonsense. I didn't stick around to find out. You can't break what's already bound, he screamed as I hit the front door. They see you now. They'll always see you. I ran 3 blocks before I stopped, heart hammering against my ribs like a caged bird. When I finally checked my phone, the messages were already waiting. Eject Jalsk. You can't break a binding once it's done.